Gloucester Tower, good morning. This is student Golf Tango Romeo Oscar Whiskey at Aeros with Bravo and QNH 1025. Request taxi.
After several months of frankly awful weather in the UK, I finally had a window to complete the qualifying cross-country flight I needed for my licence. To achieve this, I needed to complete a cross-country flight of 100 miles with 2 landings at least 15 miles apart. My plan was to fly from Gloucester to Wellesbourne, then on to Shobdon in Herefordshire, and finally back to Gloucester, a distance of around 120 miles.
Golf Oscar Whiskey at Alpha 2, ready for departure.
Golf Oscar Whiskey, right turn northeast, runway 27, clear for takeoff, surface and calm.
Cleared for takeoff on 27 Golf Oscar Whiskey.
The traffic was surprisingly quiet at Gloucester, which is typically a very busy airport, particularly on bluebird days like these. I completed my checks and got cleared straight out. The first leg was the shortest, a little over 30 miles direct from Gloucester to Wellesbourne, and a very straightforward route following the Cotswold Ridge. The weather en route was absolutely glorious. Clouds are generally the visual pilot's worst enemy, but in my opinion a few fluffy clouds in the sky just add to the experience. On passing Evesham, I said goodbye to Gloucester and dialed into Wellesbourne. Unlike Gloucester, which operates a full ATC service, Wellesbourne has a flight information service, which means they will give me information about the airfield on my approach and control my movements on the ground, but it's up to me to get myself safely into the pattern and down onto the runway.
Wellsborne information, good morning. Student Golf Tango Romeo Oscar Whiskey, 10 miles south at 2,000 feet, request join.
Tango Romeo Oscar Whiskey, Wells information, good morning. Runway News 36, left-hand circuit, QFE 1019, there's no reported traffic.
The sunny weather meant that the air was a little thermic on approach to Wellesbourne, so it got a little turbulent, but there was very little traffic about and I made an uneventful entry into the circuit to set up for a landing on runway 36. Once I was safely on the ground, I taxied to parking, had a quick 10-minute breather, and then gave Shobdon a call to let them know I was on my way.
Wellsborne information, student Golf Tango Romeo Oscar Whiskey at parking. One on board for student solo flight to Shobdon, request airfield information and taxi.
Tango Romeo Oscar Whiskey, Wells information, hello again, readability 5. Cross runway 05, taxi to holding point Echo, it's runway 36, left-hand circuit. QNH 1024.
My departure took me out over Stratford-upon-Avon, then onwards towards Worcester. This was the longest leg at 54 miles direct, and I was planning to make a slight detour to overfly my parents' home in Worcester. "25 minutes out of Wellesbourne, I dipped my wing to see my parents waving enthusiastically from their roof garden. I responded in kind with a little wing waggle before continuing on towards Herefordshire.
Shobdon Radio, Student Golf Tango Romeo, Oscar Whiskey, request join.
Golf Tango Romeo, Oscar Whiskey. Good morning, Shobdon Radio, runway news 26 left hand, and the QFE 1014.
When I had phoned Shobdon earlier, the controller had warned me that it was likely to be busy, and that they were operating an even more basic radio service than Shobdon, so the responsibility was solely on me to avoid any potential proximity issues.
Golf India Charlie, Roger. Keep a good lookout. There are two other aircraft in your vicinity, both joining via the overhead also. Keep a good lookout.
Roger, Golf India Charlie.
Golf Charlie Kilo Sierra Charlie. Keep a good lookout. Two other aircraft in your vicinity also joining via the overhead.
Golf Charlie, copy that. Just coming into the overhead now.
Golf Sierra Charlie, Roger.
The radio was very busy on the approach, so I kept my ears tuned into the calls so I could build a clear picture of the traffic around me.
Golf Oscar Whiskey descending dead side.
Golf Oscar Whiskey, Roger. Keep a good lookout. Two others joining via the overhead.
Roger, Golf Oscar Whiskey.
As I entered the overhead, I was reasonably confident that I was clear of any other traffic. However, I caught sight of a PA-28 that jumped into the pattern ahead of me, a little too close for comfort. In reality, we both had sight of each other and there was little danger in this specific case, but it does highlight the need to be fully aware at all times. Another decent landing at Shobdon, and I taxied out onto the grass parking. Whilst at Shobdon, I realised that if I headed directly back to Gloucester, that I would be a little shy of the 3 hours flight time I needed for my logbook. So I sat down with a crunchy and a brew and planned a diverted route that took me south over the Severn Estuary before heading back in.
Shobdon Radio, hello, Student Golf Tango Romeo, Oscar Whiskey, request airfield information and taxi 1 on board for student solo flight to Gloucester.
Student Golf Tango Romeo, Oscar Whiskey. Did you say you were going to Gloucester next?
A-firm Gloucester.
Student Golf Oscar Whiskey, Roger, your readability 5. It remains runway 26, a left-hand circuit. The QNH 1026.
Golf Oscar Whiskey at Alpha, ready for departure.
Golf Oscar Whiskey, Roger, the incident to wind 2706 knots.
Golf Oscar Whiskey taking off.
After taking off from Shobdon, I departed to the south. I was aware of an active NOTAM for RAF Typhoons training around the Black Mountains, so I kept well clear. Not an encounter I wanted today. Whilst en route, I realised my planned flight path path would take me directly over a dense part of the Forest of Dean. Whilst it would be a treat for the eyes, it would leave me few options for an emergency landing in the event of an engine failure, so I made an on-the-fly decision to skirt the edge of the forest instead. Over the S-bends in the River Severn, I made the turn in towards Gloucester and called in my approach.
Golf Oscar Whiskey over the S-bends, 2,500 feet, request join. Golf Oscar Whiskey, make a standard overhead join, runway 27 right hand, QFE 1021, report with 3 miles to run. Golf Oscar Whiskey, descending dead side.
Golf Oscar Whiskey, roger, report downwind, traffic crossing the airfield boundary on a touch and go in the Turkey to the Cessna.
The overhead join was straightforward, though I kept an eye out for the Cessna taking off beneath me as I flew crosswind over the active runway. This landing was probably the least smooth of the day, as I drifted over to the right side of the runway. Any further and I think I would have called a go around, but I touched down safely and taxied into parking. As I parked up, my instructor Tom was there to congratulate me. I gave him the thumbs up and then headed to the Aviator pub for a celebratory pint and a tuna melt. I was left with one last treat as I left the pub, as 2 Apache attack helicopters arrived at the airfield.